what they're saying, and that's different than just listening to something on TV or something like that.
Yes, exactly.
It's a different kind of conversation.
Yeah. So hopefully, and my hope is you're all listening to me and not just hearing me. But hearing is exactly what he said. It's background noise, things that you're not really paying attention to. Whereas listening is something that you're focusing on. You actively have to participate in doing it and really focus on what's being said. So, kind of what we were just talking into. Hearing here it's more physical. It's something that happens all the time. You can't stop hearing noise unless you have really good earbuds that go in your night when your significant other is snoring. That may help you. It's something that can distract you. I get distracted pretty easily, so it's more of a distraction to me than it may be to you, hearing the vent all the time or someone in the background talking while you're on the phone. And it's information that kind of goes in one ear and out the other. So if you're a good parent, which he sounds like he is, he's actually listening to his children's problems at home. Or whereas if I was a kid, my mom always told me that I was very good at having what she said go in one ear out the other. So it's definitely just something that you can't control. It's something that you're not really paying attention to. Whereas listening it requires more focus. It's more mental. You have to choose to do these types of things. It's more about understanding what's being said and consider what's not being said. So really what the emotion is behind what's being said. So it's really hard or difficult to have good communication when you're just hearing and not listening to what's being said. So, and with listening then, there's two different types of listening. There's reflective listening and passive listening. So reflective listening is what we are going to be talking a lot more about today, is reflection and having that reflective aspect of listening. It requires concentration. You want to acknowledge the message that's being given to you or being stated to you by the customer. You have to recognize the significance. So say the customer just said, I just recently went through a divorce. Find that the key significance there would be if they just went through a divorce, how that relates to them paying their bill is that's a decrease in their income. Most likely they have had a cut to their income, not having that other person be able to rely on. And then focusing on the key points, again, that's something that's big, but the significance behind that is that may be why they haven't been able to make those payments. Where passive listening is you're distracted while you're trying to listen. It's the no response, or what we call a verb or a non-verbal response, where you're head nodding or you're a yeah or a huh. Those types of things are more non-responsive actions. You're hearing only words. So I'm up here talking to you, but you're not comprehending what I'm saying. It's just you're hearing the tone of my voice or the words that are being said. You're not processing. And then you can't remember the details. So since you're not processing what I'm saying, if I asked you to repeat back to me a summary of what I had just given you, you wouldn't be able to recall that information if you were passively listening. If you were reflectively listening, you would be able to do that. So we have three elements here that we refer to as reflective listening. They require concentration, acknowledgement, and focus. Really, the key part to reflective listening is trying to find the facts, not only the facts that are being given to you, but the feelings behind what's being said. And reflective listening helps the speaker kind of get their point across or get their thought across. If you're reflecting what they're saying, you're helping them communicate their message a little better. Rather than if they were just giving you something you didn't reflect that back, there might be just a block in communication. They can't get fully what they're trying to say to you across. So you also want to be careful when you're trying to go into reflective listening, because as a collector, if you interrupt or talk over the customer, even if you're trying to reflect, it would be a defect. So you really want to wait for those natural pauses in conversation to be able to get that reflection statement in, to let them know you're still there with them, you're still listening and understanding what they're saying, but you're still giving them the time to be able to say what they need to say, and you're not cutting them off or making their statement shorter. So say I'm standing here, and like we talked about, finding the meaning behind the word earlier. If I were here to say, today's been a long day, that comes across as, today's been a long day. It's nothing special, just ready for it to be over. But if I were to stand up here, and I was like, oh, today has been a long day. What do you see the difference in those two statements?
The second one was a little more like you were really tired.
Yes, exactly, tired. So I didn't have to come out and say that I'm tired. It was understood by the tone and the way that was being said. The emotion, exactly, the emotion behind what I was actually stated. So what would be some good reflection statements then for someone that was telling you, say, your employee came in and they're like, oh, today's just been a long day. What would be a good reflection statement back from that statement then?
Well, I'd probably want to maybe talk to them a little bit. And
Yeah.
It sounds like maybe something's on their mind, or
Yeah.
It just seems like there's more than just them telling me they've had a long day.
Exactly. So you could go into saying, it sounds like you have a lot on your mind. Is there something that you want to talk about, or is everything okay? Asking kind of those questions with the reflection. You could go, it sounds like it's been an exhausting day for you. Would be another type of a quick reflection statement that you could go to there as well. So here we have our key big topic that we're going to be talking about today, which is the communication model that we've been taking this whole time to kind of explain. I'm gonna get this out so you're not focusing on it as much. So with the communication model, we have 3 different points. Excuse my terrible drawing. So the beginning is what we're going to focus on most today, which is reflect or acknowledging. Then there is the tell portion of the communication model, and the ask, which we'll talk about a little bit today, but we'll go more in depth with it in the next day to come. So under reflection, we talked a lot about, it's a big point of it is acknowledging. I'm just going to talk to that, right? So we're acknowledging what's being said, the statements that they're telling us their situation, we want to acknowledge when we're reflecting. Another part of acknowledging is validation. You're validating to the customer that you understand what they're going through, or you're validating that you're hearing them, or you're listening to what they're being said. Which also goes right into the next point of reflection is listening. You can't reflect what's being said to you if you're not actively listening to or reflectively listening to what they're saying. Part of the ask here would be asking those fact-finding questions, or the reason past due as a collector. Trying to seek information, which is another one here. You are looking for more from what they're telling you. You need more information to be able to maybe go back to this reflection statement, or telling them the answer to what they may be asking for. And then the last one would be just to check in. You're talking to your long lost aunt, and she just checking in with her, seeing how she's doing, how her week's been, that kind of thing. So those would all be asks. And then we have the tells. So this is where we're stating our opinion, or you're giving direction, whether that's telling someone what to do or actually literally giving directions to like the nearest Chipotle or something. Those would both be under tell. Another would be info dumping, is is what we call it. So you're giving a lot of information to one person, and they're taking it all in, letting them know what to do. For collection specifically, we have disclosures. The disclosures we have to read when we're opening and closing the call, the mini Miranda, those types of things are tells. We have to tell the customer that. And then education. So when we're educating the customer on the account, or what I'm doing here, educating you all on this process, that's a tell. I'm telling you guys the information, and I'm telling the cardholder about their account and what's happening on the account. So out of these three things, what do you think we do the most of in general, as a collector, in real life, outside of work? What do you think we're in the most of the time? So when we're communicating, we're in one of these three things every time we're speaking to someone.
Well, I think it depends on the situation. You know, I mean, I think clearly it depends on the situation. I mean, there's times I'm listening,
Yep.
you know, but there's times I'm probably not. Yeah, to me, it just depends so much on the situation.
Yeah, definitely. So, most of the time, we are actually telling. We're stating our opinion. As a collector, definitely we're reading all of those disclosures. We're educating the cardholder on their account, or the reasons we're calling. That's our job. We're calling them to tell them. So if we tell the most, then what do you think we do the least of in most situations?
Well, probably listen. We don't listen as much as we
Yep,
need to.
exactly. So if we're telling most of the time, there will be some questions that we'd ask here, but we're typically in reflection the least, which is funny because as a collector, this is something that you should be doing most of the time. You want to reflect to be able to get to that payment, which is why we're going to go over it in so much depth today. It's a tool that I believe is the most important tool to use as a collector. Again, we talk about the hard skills, but we can teach you one way to do that, and you're always going to be able to go through those steps and get to where you need to go. But we really have to teach you this and teach you these tools to practice to be able to really help your collection abilities and just communicating with people in general in life. So if you were to think about some reflection statements, some typical things that you would say to someone that's telling you they just recently lost their job, what are some statements that come to mind that you think are most generally used?
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yes, exactly. I'm sorry is one of the two most used statements on the floor and in life. If someone tells you something bad is happening, you immediately say, I'm sorry. Can you think of any other ones?
It's got to be rough on your family.
Yep, that is a good one. That's actually even better than I'm sorry. That would be something that's a little variation. The other one that I would going for was I understand. So typically, I'm sorry and I understand are the easiest. They're the first things that come to your mind when someone tells you bad news. And they're okay. You're not going to get a defect for using those statements. You're not going to be punished or penalized in any way for using that. But again, back to that customer experience, we want each person to feel like their situation is individualized and it's being heard individually. They're not getting a script that you're told to read back to them. And I'm sorry and I understand are typically something that everyone's going to say. So we try to avoid those. They're being a little more generic, and we can go into others. So I understand that could be a frustrating situation to go through, or I can't believe that would be an overwhelming thing to have to go through at this time. I can't believe what you may be going through right now, or and those types of things are things that you can put in place of the I'm sorry's and the I understands. And again, because with reflection, you want to make it your own. Back in the middle of the call model where you were had that you came out, you want to make sure that it's not a one-size-fits-all conversation. You want to really not make that person feel like it's a rehearsed conversation. Just be you, and that's why we're teaching you these tools to be able to really put your own spin on it and pick reflection statements that you feel comfortable saying to somebody.
You know what? We'll stop right there. I know we.